we'll be interviewing Mike Nattrass, MEP of the Independence of Europe Party. Mike, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, could you give us a brief history on yourself, where you're from and all that?
Well, in the 1990s, I was UKIP and was one of those that established the party. I put a lot of money in. I became chairman, party chairman of the party, and later I was deputy leader under Roger Natman. I served 10 years as a member of the European Parliament, which finished in July this last year.
2014.
And basically, I don't agree with Nigel Farage. And because people don't agree with Nigel Farage, there's no room in the party for them. And you'll find there's a lot of victims of that sort who are now joining us or joining other parties because they've been pushed out. He lost half of his MEPs during my term. He lost 6 or 7 MEPs, 2 to the Conservatives, 3 to purely independent. They sat away, and a couple of them just left because they were so sick of Nigel Farage.
When did you first think that Nigel may have been a problem for the party, that you just decided it's time for me to go?
One of the big things he did was to change the constitution, because we've always in UKIP had a democratic constitution whereby the members are able to vote at the party conference. But he changed that so that now he has control over every action of the party. He even vets the members' postal votes when they are trying to put forward candidates for, say, the London Assembly or MEPs or anything, all of those votes. So he can change those, and he does do, which surprises the members because they think their postal votes mean something. They don't.
So what exactly is the Independence of Europe Party? Like, what's their...
Well, our main policy, obviously, is to leave Europe because it dominates this country. It stops us trading with the world in the way we wish to trade with the world. It also costs us a lot of money to be a member of the European Union. So we pay all this money in order to be stopped, really, because our legislation is put upon us rather than being democratically done in this country. And also, because it costs us a lot of money, we could spend that money elsewhere. If we left the EU, that money could go into hospitals and schools and all sorts of things in this country, instead of trying to subsidise the mafia or other things that it goes into, because a lot of that money sent into Europe is actually stolen. And if you look at the statistics on it, it's absolutely amazing.
What do you mean by stolen?
It's stolen by people. It goes into Romania, Bulgaria, even Italy, where people take it, and it's never accounted for. And if you do the research on it, you'll find nobody ever gets to the bottom of it. It's been taken. So why don't we just spend it in this country on health or education or other things, instead of trying to give money away to people who never get it? The right people never get it. All that happens is the mafia get it.
How do you say it? How is it through
politicians?
I was
10 well,
like, what's the process then?
Right, the process is they apply for a grant, they give them the money, and what happens next is that money that's taken away and taken to wherever, Bulgaria, Romania, or wherever, isn't properly policed. So at the end of the day, they come back with the answer, or the question, where did it go? And nobody actually knows. It might be for a new road, and the new road doesn't exist, but neither does the money. That's even happened in Portugal.
So if the party does come to power and we do separate states from the EU, what's the next step for the party? Where do you guys plan to go?
Normal trading with the world, normal relations with the world, without having to contemplate what the EU might be thinking about doing. Can I just give you an example on that? At the moment, they're leading us into a war with the Soviet Union over the Ukraine. Why do you think that might be? Is it because, do you think, that the EU have taken Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, Hungary, Poland, and all the other states round Russia? And now the Russians have said, hang on a moment, the Ukraine is just a bridge too far. We don't want the Ukraine taken away. We've already given land to the Ukraine. There's a lot of Russians living there. Look at the argument that Putin might have on that score. I feel quite sorry for him, because what happened actually was The EU were trying to dominate the Ukraine, trying to make sure that the politicians within the Ukraine got sufficient money to say, yes, we want to join the EU, flew their flags in the capital, and that's when suddenly there was a reaction. After the EU had flown their flags and had parades in the middle of the Ukraine saying we're going to join the EU, of course the Russians got excited, and of course then you got Russian flags there. As soon as you got Russian flags, hey, that was a problem. It wasn't while the EU flag was there, the 12 stars. That wasn't a problem, that wasn't provocation. But as soon as the Soviet flag comes along, apparently that's provocation. And from that day onwards, everything went wrong. And now we're trying to blame the Russians. I blame the EU, they started it.
But how did they start? You mean they...
But before you say anything, let me just point out we're now being dragged into it. And apparently this government, who ought to think before doing it, is sending our troops for training purposes, into the Ukraine. How stupid is that?
But how does the EU essentially have started this war that we're being dragged into?
Yes, because they want to colonize the Ukraine. They want to take it on as the next EU state. As I've just said, they've taken all of the other Soviet states in that area.
How do you feel UK culture has sort of evolved or changed in the last few years, or even in the last decade?
I think UK culture has evolved and changed over many centuries. And we get influxes of people from all over the world, which has an influence, obviously, on our music, on the way we dine, on the way we act. And also, because we bring these people in, we get to understand people from the world. And that's brilliant, because then we can trade with them. Once you know who they are and why how they tick, it makes it far easier to trade with them. So, for example, if you've got a Chinese community, which we do have here, which we do have in Birmingham, etc., we can use those people because they speak Chinese, because they know China, some of them. And we can say, what are your influences in China? Who do you know? And can we trade with them? Let's do it. Nothing to do with the EU. That's nothing to do with the EU. That's to do with Britain and the way we're built. And that can apply to the Afro-Caribbeans, or it can apply to Africa, Australia, South America, because we've been everywhere, man, and we bring everybody in.
So you think the melding is a good thing? It helps to...
Of course it is, yeah, providing there's room. The problem with this country is space, not race. It's space, not race. So I'm not against people coming to this country. I am, though, against overcrowding of housing, schools, hospitals, roads, so on and so on and so on, and of course the social side of it, the pensions and the hospitals and all the other care facilities. You cannot possibly bring people in an unlimited fashion without a plan. If you've got a plan to bring people in and you know what you're doing, fine, let's do that one. But to just bring people in so that the roads come to a standstill and the hospital beds are impossible, that's how not to run anything. You wouldn't do it in your own community if you had a voice in it.
So with that, would you say that there maybe isn't a migration crisis happening currently in London? I mean, well, not in London, but in England.
There is, because the controls haven't been seized upon and used.
How so?
I'm not talking about racial controls. I'm talking about the necessity of having people in the country. If we have vacancies for people in this country, in jobs and so on, that's fine. Let's give them visas to come in. Let's allow them to work. On the same basis that, say, the Australians might or the New Zealanders might. They have proper systems to regulate people coming into the country. We seem very slack, but our main problem isn't from the rest of the world, it's from Europe, because the rest of the world do have a visa system. If you're coming in from South America or Africa or somewhere, then you are checked out. If you're coming in from Europe, you're not checked, because it's free travel and
for the European Union.
For the European Union. So if everybody wants to come here from, for the sake of argument, Italy or as I keep saying, Bulgaria, Romania, and places where they really haven't got a standard of living, and they think it's going to excite them to earn more money, they'll soon find out how expensive it is here, and they'll soon find out they can't afford accommodation, and they'll soon find out that they have to sleep on the street, and that's really bad for them. It's not just bad for us, it's bad for them, because they're attracted to the country without realising that really it's not all, gold on the pavements. It's a problem for them. and the poor guys don't know what to do once they get here.
So do you feel like maybe there should be a stricter policy for
Yeah.
immigrating and not
Yeah.
just settlement
If people
visas?
want to come here, they should say why they want to come here. They should have a job to come to. So for their safety, as well as our social security and safety, and not undermining our own people working at the moment, because actually what's happened is it's depressed the living wage here in the UK. And the multinationals, the big companies, they're fine because they can get cheap labour. They make people work on the really, really bottom line wages, which are bad, basically. Not only that, I know of cases where people are actually being sacked so that they can be replaced by people who are working for these minimalistic wages.
But do you feel maybe the overcrowding is because people tend to focus on London itself and don't extend outward?
No, not necessarily. You've got overcrowding in all the major cities, even in Birmingham, in Liverpool, in Leeds, in Manchester, even Glasgow. They'll go to all of those places, anywhere they think there's a job. And often there isn't.
You started off with the UKIP party prior to this one. Or, I mean, you were...
I was in the referendum party, actually, before then, but never mind. That was...
You did work with them prior.
Yeah.
And obviously, a lot of people, and especially the way it's portrayed in the media, tend to have a quite negative opinion about them, thinking that they're quite racist or not exactly race-friendly.
Yeah.
Being is that, how do you and your party try to separate yourselves from that so people know it's like, yes, we may have been affiliated with them, but we're not bigoted, right?
But you see, the thing is that I'm not going to start trying to defend UKIP, but I have to on that one because they're not racist. Not really. They're not.
But they're very, the media portrays them as such
Yeah, exactly.
so much.
Because they're trying to blacken their name. They're trying to spoil it for them. That's a spoiler. That's not because they are. That's because, however, and this is another reason why people left the party, including why I got excited as an MEP, Nigel Farage allowed racists, pure racists, to join his group in the European Parliament. Amongst them were the Lega Nord from north of Italy. And they were well known for beating up immigrants under bridges in Italy and throwing their belongings into the river. They were actually prosecuted for it. And one of them, Mario Borghesio, was actually, I don't know if he was convicted, but he got into trouble for racism in the Italian parliament because he abused a black lady minister of the Italian parliament. And also praised the views of the Norwegian mass murderer. Praised the views of the Norwegian mass murderer. And Nigel Farage had him in his group. Now, why do you entertain people like that? Because the old adage is, birds of a feather flock together. So, yeah, if you want to be cleaner than clean and make it look at least as if you're open-minded but you reject racism, you don't entertain people who are known to be racist. And he has. And he does.
And I can assume that your party does not.
We certainly do not. If anybody in the world wants to join our party that believes that Britain should trade democratically with the rest of the world and not be dominated by Europe, we're very happy for you to join anybody.
Going back on the subject of youth, what do you think could be done to sort of gain the trust, or at least the interest, to try to make your voice heard, to have them like look for a party that speaks for what they're looking for and to vote for them?
Yeah, well, that's up to the parties to do that. There's no solution, really. A lot of kids of 16, for example, because they're even talking, particularly in Scotland, about reducing the age of voting down to 16. And I was politically aware at that age. I was already politically aware. But I know most of my friends were not, and they couldn't have cared a monkeys about politics at the time. I was chairman of Young Conservatives before I was 18 in Colville in Leicestershire. So I was taking an interest in politics at an early age. But most of them thought I was crazy.
Do you think it would benefit?
I probably was. Pardon?
Do you think it would benefit, though, in Scotland if they did lower it to 16?
I don't, actually. No, the reason is that, yes, you do have some 16-year-olds who are...
Switched on.
Yeah, who are switched on. But the vast majority are not. And the danger is somehow at an election, the ones that are not understanding politics will vote for the wrong reason, because somebody will bring out a record and tell everybody to vote in this particular way, or something strange like that.
Maybe a celebrity endorsement in there.
Yeah, maybe a celebrity endorsement from somebody who's a rapper or somebody who they worship. I don't know, and that could be the right thing, but it probably isn't the right answer.
On the subject of fracking,
Yes.
there's been a lot of talk recently when it comes to when fracking's been now that is being brought to England, and people saying we shouldn't have it. It's polluting the waters. It's causing earthquakes. Well, how do you feel about that? Do you think we should maybe hold off before we start going into this new process?
I think the jury's out in one respect, and obviously it shouldn't be done near to communities where it is going to cause problems. And starting it near Blackpool doesn't seem to have been a very good idea, because that was really bad publicity. But if you look at the UK, it's not like the United States of America, where you've got wide open prairies and places where nobody's going to bother. Here, there's usually a town or a village or somebody living close to nearly everywhere. You do have certain areas where that isn't the case. You have the moors, and probably in Yorkshire, and you have Scotland with vast open areas, low populations. So there may be opportunities to do that. But I have to say that if that's going to happen, it's got to be done after a local referendum, and some of the profits from what's going on has to go to the local community to make it worth their while. And if those two things are observed, if they have a local referendum on it and they get some of the action for putting up with it, I think that's probably what we should be doing, because it's been seen that it's really helped the US economy. It's driven down the price of oil. It's meant that energy has become cheaper. And, those have got to be a short-term gain and a good thing.
But what about the long-term pollution effects that it's had?
Overstated. I think mainly overstated.
Do you mean the earthquakes and the water pollution?
I think they are overstated, yes. The jury's out. We need more information on that. You're sounding as if you really do believe that it causes pollution.
Well, I'm not saying that I do, but there's been many people who are saying like maybe we should stop the fracking and perform a few tests to ensure that it doesn't actually cause earthquakes, or that it doesn't cause tap water to be flammable.
Well, absolutely. Well, those people are quite right if that's what's happening. But the cases of that are very few and far between. And
do you not feel it's enough cases to maybe stop for a moment?
If there's just one case, it has to be analysed and looked at to make sure that things are safe. I agree with you, and that's what I opened up by saying. If it's safe, and the jury comes back and says yes, it is safe, don't worry about it. That was an exceptional situation, perhaps, where the water. Well, I think they got that completely wrong. I think they were too close to Blackpool, yeah. And it will cause some kind of small earthquake, because they are basically crushing things underground, so it's bound to, yeah. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. A small earthquake is not a bad thing.
Internet privacy, ironically, has sort of become the main subject in the public eye.
Yes.
In the sense of the SOSA Act in America, the celebrity hackings that have been releasing intimate pictures on the internet, and so on and so forth.
Absolutely.
How do you feel we're coping now with net neutrality and sort of the anonymity there is on the internet? Is there a problem? Do you think we should,
I don't think we are coping with it, because I think people are being a bit too free and easy with it. They don't appreciate what they're putting up there is almost indestructible, and that it's going to haunt them probably for generations, and that the images that they're putting up and the private messages they're putting up are going to be around. Really, people should be more careful. They shouldn't be sending out all these silly messages, and they shouldn't be putting out all these amazing photographs, because they should be thinking to themselves, well, would you put it in an envelope and send it to somebody anonymously, or even with your name on it, to somebody who's a publicist? Because that's what you're doing. You're actually sending it, if you like, to a newspaper, a publicist. Anything you put on the internet eventually will find its way to somebody who can use it if they want to. So the answer is, be cautious. Don't put silly things on the internet. Pretend you're writing a letter to a newspaper.
Do you feel like maybe we should sort of sacrifice a bit of that freedom that we have over the internet by letting the government regulate it at any point?
No, because I think people should be responsible. If people are stupid, if you're saying third parties are putting things up and they're putting, say, naked images of somebody else on the internet, yeah, that's got to be stopped. That's got to be policed. That's got to be stopped. But for an idiot to make a fool of himself on the internet, let him get on with it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Really good to meet you.
It was nice to meet you too. Any last words you'd like to give out to the people of the UK?
Yeah, particularly you. I want you to vote for independence from Europe.
I'll sign up today. Thanks to Mike Nattrass of the Independence from Europe Party for coming in and doing an interview with us, and we hope to see you next time on the show.
Well, I'll be here. Thank you.
He'll be here.
I'll be here, even if you don't invite me.
Thank you and goodbye.